Hello and welcome to the Fast Break Pregame Show. My name is Aman Kidwai, manager of the UConn blog and the Fast Break newsletter, and I'm joined by our basketball writer, Patrick Martin. We are on to the national championship after UConn defeats Alabama in the Final Four. They are meeting Purdue in the national championship game on Monday night after beating Bama 86-72. Patrick, we were at the game in the football stadium. What did you think about UConn's win over Bama?
That was tense, man. There were many stretches that I thought that this is where the magic was going to die. Bama hit 8 threes in the first half. They just were unconscious, and more importantly, Nate Oates had that team dialed in with the game plan, and the schematics are for what Bama does well is like a souped up version, an analytical version of Seton Hall with like five dudes that can get to the rim or equally as comfortable firing from three. And because of that, UConn's like very elite help defenders like Alex Caravan, Cam Spencer, Tristen Newton, they were on an island. So in the first half, there was a lot of no man's land going on with the threes of like how far out do I get on this guy? If I get too close to him, he's going to blow by me, and then maybe Clingan gets in foul trouble. If I sag off him, which is what they did, they hit the open threes. So yeah, that formula looked like it was working until the Tide cooled off from three in the second half. I think they only hit 2 threes in the out of the break and live by the three, die by the three. But as always, this team can take somebody's best punch, and whatever style of game it is, as Hassan Diarra said after, they're ready to play. And I think UConn was a little taken back by the physicality of the game to start, and they adjusted in the second half. It wasn't a 30-0 trill shot, blow them out at the end. And I do think that the final score is nowhere near indicative of like how close it was. I mean, that they tacked on their points towards the last 2 minutes of the game. Caravan's three to put it to 10, I think was with 2-3 minutes left. And that was the icing on the cake. Until then, it was because Bama just never went away. And I know you love this, Aman, but it's a game of runs. And every time
That's right.
UConn strained together 8-0, 7-0 run, Alabama would come right back down. Rylan Griffin would hit a three. Grant Nelson was absolutely cooking Donovan Clingan for a stretch there in the second half. So they never went away until the very end. And tip of the bucket cap to Nate Oates and Alabama, because that was the scariest game I think for UConn that they faced all year, and they came out unscathed, really.
Yeah, I mean, so many things went right for Bama. You have to credit them. You have to also, just acknowledge that that's, 8 of 11 threes is just a little bit of luck there. But when you consider that that's the situation, that they're frustrating UConn a little bit defensively as well, I thought they did a good job defending Clingan early, kind of. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, obviously, Clingan got his and found space, but I thought when they were doubling down on him, or, when UConn went to him down low, Alabama was finding a way to get him to get rid of the ball, especially in the first half. And then they also did get a lot of UConn's better players into foul trouble. So again, a lot of things going right for Bama. I was starting to feel a moment early, mid, second half where I was like, the vibes are actually not so great right now, because UConn stormed out, built its lead early in the second half, but then Bama storms right back. And I think, Clingan got dunked on, right? Like that was, that's a moment where you're like, what's happening here? It's just 2 points, but it was a serious moment.
Well, you know what it reminded me of in 2014, if you all remember the title game against Kentucky. I think
Hmm.
UConn it was a 2 possession game, and James Young had this down the lane hammer of a poster,
Yeah.
I think on poor Phil Nolan or maybe DeAndre Daniels. And everyone in the crowd is thinking, "Oh, this is it. This wakes them up, and here comes the Kentucky machine." And it was looking like that with Nelson's poster. It was a double whammy because Newton had taken a hard fall the play before and was slow to get back. Nelson in transition stuffs it in Clingan's face. Yeah, how many times have we seen Clingan go straight up and win that battle? So it was like, oh my God, he can bleed. Like it was, this impossible rim protector just got broken. And immediately following that, Nelson had two buckets where he took like two crossover dribbles from the perimeter and drove on Clingan and drove on Caravan. And it was looking like, oh God, he's going to take over. He did that against North Carolina. And Oates was so good in North Carolina, sagging off Elliot Cadeau and putting that defender on RJ Davis or Cormac Ryan or all of UNC's plus shooters. And he was doing the same thing with Steph Castle. They were just, if Castle was on the weak side, they shifted their player over to the paint because they knew Castle wasn't, a serious threat to three. Now he did hit his first two, but after that he went 0 for 4. Castle made UConn pay with a little bit of like the Andre Jackson treatment, cutting on baseline, and just being an incredible one-on-one player with his size and versatility when backing people down in the paint. But to go back to the Grant Nelson thing, like it was looking real dire there for a second until Samson Johnson came in, and he had the athleticism to stay with Nelson on the perimeter while still having the wingspan to contest him when he did get inside. And that stopped Nelson's momentum in its tracks. And that was when, like around the under 8 timeout, he gave Clingan a breather. You probably had the coaches talking like, "Hey, you're good, man. Just bring him to the corner of the ring. You got this. Just take a breath." And what happens when he comes back out for the under 8? He scores, I think, 4 of UConn's next 5 points, either dunks or offensive rebound putbacks. And next thing you know, it's an 8 to 10 point game, and you're good. Speaks so much to the different levers that Danny can pull and the flexibility with different lineups and how there really isn't a weakness. You can't sag off Steph Castle too much because he's going to give you 21 points. You can't take Donovan Clingan and bring him out into the perimeter because then we'll just throw Samson Johnson on you. So even quote unquote weaknesses or kryptonite, as I've talked about in articles this week, there are counterpunches to that the coaching staff is more than ready to throw out there with.
Yeah, I mean, like you're saying, it's a testament to a lot of things about UConn, including I think just their composure, their mental toughness that they've been able to take through any situation. And with the way that Castle was scoring, I mean, that is really a display that I found to be tremendous. And it was almost like a break in case of emergency situation. That, all right, we need Steph Castle, the scorer, today, please. And he's like, "Yep, got it." So
well, he said as much. He said as much after the game, saying like, "Did you?" And I asked him, Did the coaching staff have any idea that Oates was potentially going to sag off you?" And he's like, "Oh, 100%. Like I watched the film. We saw what they did to Elliot Cadeau, and it again." So much flexibility, all 5 scorers in double figures, but this was Steph Castle's night. They were prepping him every game day leading up to this, saying like, okay, like you're going to have these mismatches. Mark Sears is 6'1", Aaron Estrada is 6'3". If we give it to you in the paint, you're not looking to be the secondary ball handler or the creator here. You put the ball in the basket. And again, like you said, Steph, okay, here's 21 points. An incredibly efficient 21 points and tough defense. Still, I know Mark Sears got his, but he kind of filled it up towards the end of the game. He didn't hit a 3 till the second half, and Castle was all over him. And this is a good sign for UConn's defenders as a whole. But like they made Alabama work, where in the beginning, it looked really easy in the beginning for Alabama because the shots were falling, but they still had to really, really run their stuff. No fast break points, by the way. All the vaunted weave, the tears in their eyes, the weave. 0 fast break points. That's 0.
Hate to see it.
Because UConn's defense, they made Bama work. Now, because Nate Oates is a great coach, they still got their points, but it wore them down so much getting these manufactured looks, nothing easy, that by the under 8 and with 5 minutes left, like the shots weren't falling. They didn't have the legs because they were running all these sets to get these open looks, and that looked great for the first uh, 25 minutes of the game, and then eventually it just kind of fades out. And how many times have we seen UConn just wear teams down? I think of Seton Hall in the Garden, where like it was a tight game until about 10 minutes left, and it's like they can't. Not a lot of teams can keep up that level of intensity on both ends of the court for 40 minutes against UConn.
Yeah, I mean, let's say for example, last night you're really focused on trying to stop Castle and Clingan. Oh, by the way, there's Cam Spencer and Alex Caravan open on the outside, able to efficiently drop 14 points each of them and frustrate the hell out of you. So yeah, I mean, it's too much to deal with. We've been seeing it all year, and one more game for the Huskies before history, all sorts of history, and a bunch of conversations that we're not even ready to have. But Patrick, UConn's playing Purdue. It is the matchup, the prophecy that was foretold, UConn and Purdue meeting in the national championship game. I mean, I mentioned this before, but it's pretty cool. You don't always see the two best teams or the top two teams make it here in this situation. So for that reason, exciting matchup for the world. But from the UConn perspective, what do you think about how does this Purdue matchup look to you?
You see Purdue, and I don't mean this as a slight, because if I'm comparing anybody to UConn, the way they've played this year, that's a compliment. But it is diet UConn. It is goodwill UConn. It is just like an off-brand version of what UConn has perfected, with an inside-out emphasis in the court space with lots of shooters. Um, Zach Edey, what I'm trying to say this diplomatically, but like whatever you think about him and his impact, he still is someone that you have to like almost allow him to get 20 points and 10 rebounds. And what I'm excited most about is the matchup between the two, obviously, but then saying, okay, assuming those two cancel each other out, I want to see how UConn's supporting cast stacks up against Purdue, because I think we've spent all year hearing how this is new Purdue. They've got help around him. It's not just dump it into Edey. Well, I'd like to see how Steph Castle guards, Braden Smith, or does he get a couple, chances on Lance Jones or Fletcher Loyer. I want to see Cam Spencer do what he's done against Purdue. He's hit a game winner against Purdue before. He's got experience against his team. They're going to lean on that. So if you look at it from a simplified view of assuming Edey and Clingan cancel each other out, and that assumption is the hope, I think, for UConn fans. You want those two to cancel each other out. If Edey is dominating Clingan so much so that he's in foul trouble, he can't get anything going, he's essentially limited to post passing, like a post release outlet, that's when things are going to get real tight for UConn on defense. So if the two cancel out, that is the best case scenario, because I'm rolling with UConn's supporting. I don't even want to say supporting cast, but UConn's other perimeter players 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about some of the non-Zach Edey elements of Purdue here. Who is the most kind of dangerous player? Who impresses you the most out of that Purdue supporting cast? And totally agree, it's not a supporting cast of Donovan Clingan for UConn, but it does kind of feel like that's the case with Purdue.
Well, you got Braden Smith, the honorable mention All-American, Cousy Award finalist, I should say, not the winner. We all know
Shout out Tristen Newton.
who won that one. First team All Big Ten. Yeah, so I think so. He's compared to, actually, in our Store Central forum, someone said like a better shooting, worst finishing Tyler Kolek, which I found interesting because UConn has had varying degrees of success against our favorite Marquette white boy. And then Lance Jones, 3-and-D guy, again 6'1". You have to wonder if UConn's size is this something that really envelops them. But he's just like, he's their dog, their junkyard dog, Again, everybody is a volume shooter on this perimeter. Fletcher Loyer, 6'6", off-ball wing shooter, kind of like the same role that like Caravan played last year, or just like, post up on the perimeter and hit your shots if they come to you. Then Trey Kaufman-Renn, kind of like the glue guy, 6'9", crashing the glass, just kind of making the winning plays. And look, I like what Purdue like conceptually does when you put these three shooters out there that make sound decisions, and you throw in kind of like your scrappy junkyard dog and Kaufman Wren around Edey. Now, where the worries come is the foul trouble. We have to talk fouls, because UConn's foul rate is a little worrisome, and that's what Purdue does. They will hold the edge on free throws, and with an arm's distance, 2, 3 possession lead, they kind of just wear you out in the same way that UConn does. I'm worried if there's an early deficit. Now I know UConn was down by 5, I think, for like a minute or so against Alabama. But if there's a sustained 7-minute deficit for 5 minutes, how does UConn respond to that? We saw them storm back against Creighton in the second half until fouls once more became the issue. But when you're facing a deficit against a team like Purdue, the margin for error is so thin. You can't over ramp up the aggression and then draw more fouls, because you're right back to square one. So it's going to be fascinating to see how Hurley manages players with foul trouble. He did such a good job of that against Alabama, where he kept Steph Castle in with 3 fouls a bunch, and then pulled him at a time where he knew Oates was going to have to try to draw fouls to lengthen the game, and then he threw in Hassan Diarra to close it out. He let Caravan play through 2 fouls, I think, in the first half. He has shown times to, like, okay, Samson, you picked up 3, but we need Donovan to rest. You're going to have to play through that some more. That is going to be unfortunately, like the narrative of the game. If UConn can stay out of foul trouble, I just think they have too much and will eventually wear Purdue down. But if there's any whiff of having to use contingency plans because of fouls, and I don't mean going to the bench, I just mean like, this isn't a lineup we really want to throw out here, then that's when Purdue can steal this from them.
Yeah, I mean, the formula is Purdue finds a way to somehow get off to a quick early start, hit some extra hit some threes, and then, like you said, I think they'll try and almost like run out the clock with their approach on fouls. UConn has, as we've mentioned, barely been trailing through the NCAA tournament, and really mostly stomping teams. One of the things I was really impressed with during the Alabama game was just the way that they fought through being down, even though it was not an experience that they had been feeling very much. So even though, fans might be feeling crazy, because it's a scenario where you just aren't even used to trailing anymore. I remember the San Diego State game. The lead got down to merely 6, and people were freaking out, for UConn's sake. So I think there's immense level, like I said earlier, just of the toughness and maturity from this team. If they face the deficit, they're going to keep running their thing. If guys aren't available, obviously, that is when you're not going to be at your best. But that's kind of like, it's like the formula for the upset for anyone. That was San Diego State's formula for the upset. Obviously, you need an act of God to get some guys off the court.
But this is what Purdue does. I mean, Edey is so good at using his size and leverage to pick up off-ball fouls, when someone's just battling for a position with him, like trying to front him, and that's why people get so mad about Purdue, because you just throw it into this dude who's in the sphere, and either it's a foul or he turns around and just does a jump hook. I hope that Clingan has the discipline to get rid of that, or that Painter is going to have to be creative and putting Clingan through some pick and rolls, or maybe Edey as a decoy or something like that to to throw UConn off, because what Edey's best at is just parking his ass in the middle and either drawing a foul, getting an offensive rebound, or just a simple jump hook. If Clingan can get rid of two of those three, look, he's going to get his. He's going to get 25 and 14. But if that's all it is, and he's not imbuing his, kicking out to open shooters, and all of a sudden Fletcher Loyer is giving you 20 points as well, and Braden Smith has caught fire, that's when things will start to get dangerous, because they'll always have that constant in the middle.
Well, I think we've done a thorough job here breaking down the Purdue matchup. I'm going to just throw out one quick prediction from the Fast Break podcast, which you can also see that went out this morning, but Sunday morning. But yeah, I do like UConn's chances to win here, and I'm going to predict a Samson Johnson game. I think he has potential to be a contributor in this battle against Edey, and it's not not like a 20-pointer from him, but I think we're going to see a really strong Samson Johnson performance in the national championship game. That's my prediction. Patrick, how about you? What are you thinking prediction wise heading into Monday night?
75-70, good guys. I don't. The spread opened at 6.5. I'm not making any betting advice, but I think that was awfully high. Granted, NC State was on a magical run, so you don't really know how Purdue has taken that, but Tennessee was a damn good result for them, and Purdue has played an excellent non-conference schedule. I mean, it's 1 and 1A for a reason. You always think that UConn has that next gear that Purdue can't yet hit, but this is single elimination. Anything can happen in one game. In the same way that, like, in the first half, it looked like, okay, I guess this is a game where Alabama hits 15 threes. We're going to have to deal with that. It could be an exact same situation where Purdue is unconscious from 3 in the first half, and you just have to say, like, all right, like, hang around, keep them at arm's distance, and let UConn's overall quality just kind of impact the game as it goes on. And yeah, I mean, I think anyone that's been following this all year, which, thank you, by the way, I can't believe you're actually listening to me speak, but I always lean towards the pessimist side, but I like this matchup more for UConn than I did Alabama, just because I think athletic guards that can get to the cup or create their own shot are so much more dangerous than a set offensive system where they're relying on counteractions and everything like that. I think UConn is much more adept at handling it, and you saw how they looked. Well, it's like the Creighton game. So they're both blowouts, and if you put that on neutral court, it's probably a 1 or 2 possession game, and that's what I see with Purdue. But yeah, I'm worried. I mean, look, I've got the bucket hat to shout out Donovan Clingan. I've got the Bengals to shout out Dan Hurley. I'm trying to do all the juju, all of the good vibes leading up to Monday, because I think they're going to need it. This is going to be, I think, potentially one of the most rewarding finals ever if things break UConn's way, because this is a gauntlet, truly. And I think they're going to do it, and it's going to be amazing, but it's going to take a gargantuan effort.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. Illinois, Alabama, Purdue, nobody can complain about the path, if what happens. But that is going to do it for us from Phoenix. We know there's lots of Husky fans having a great time. I'm sure the vibes will be building across this day and tomorrow. We've seen great pre-games, post-parties, after-parties, hotel send-offs, hotel receptions. So all of that happening in Glendale. We'll be sure to have coverage all over Store Central, the UConn blog, and the interwebs. Thank you all for watching.